Our gospel reading today is from Luke 17, verses 11 through 19. 10 men with leprosy. On his way to Jerusalem, Jesus went along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men with leprosy came toward him. They stood at a distance and shouted, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." Jesus looked at them and said, "Go show yourselves to the priests." On their way, they were healed. When one of them discovered that he was healed, he came back, shouting praises to God. He bowed down at the feet of Jesus and thanked him. The man was from the country of Samaria. Jesus asked, "Weren't 10 men healed? Where are the other 9? Why has this foreigner, the only one who came back to thank God?" Then Jesus told the man, You may get up and go. Your faith has made you well." May God add his blessings to these words. I want to start off by sharing with you today's daily reading from Henry Nouwen. And it's titled, "Live Your Wounds." You have been wounded in many ways. The more you open yourself to being healed, the more you will discover how deep your wounds are. The great challenge is living your wounds through instead of thinking them through. It is better to cry than to worry. Better to feel your wounds deeply than to understand them. Better to let them enter into your silence than to talk about them. The choice you face constantly is whether you are taking your hurts to your head or to your heart. In your head, you can analyze them, find their cause and consequences, and coin words to speak and write about them. But no final healing is likely to come from that source. You need to let your wounds go down to your heart. Then you can live through them and discover that they will not destroy you. Your heart is greater than your wounds. So as we hear in the reading today about the 10 men with leprosy, they've obviously heard about Jesus. They've obviously heard what Jesus has done other places. And so they come to Jesus to seek relief from their wounds, from their leprosy. And Jesus, as Jesus is gracious, heals them, tells them to go see the priest, because if you were unclean, if you had leprosy, you had to announce everywhere you went that you were unclean. These men probably had families, had wives that they hadn't seen for a long time. Maybe they left food for them to survive on, but these 10 men had gathered together because they all shared one thing in common, and that's they had leprosy. And so Jesus, being as graceful as Jesus is, heals them, tells them to go see the priest, because in order to get released from that bondage of having to announce you're unclean, a priest had to certify you as being clean. There was a process of being declared clean. And that then gave you credibility. You can say, "Oh, so-and-so priest said I'm clean." And so Jesus tells them to go see the priest. And they dutifully go off. But then the Samaritan notices, along with the rest of them, that their leprosy has disappeared. They are healed before they even get to the priest. But I kind of think of the vending machine analogy for this. They came to a holy man who could heal and got what they asked for. In essence, like a vending machine. We can't surmise, I can only guess as to why the other 9 did not come back. Maybe they were so anxious to get their clean bill of health so they could join their families. The thought didn't even arise in them. Maybe they went and gave thanks at the temple once they could re-enter the temple and give thanks. But it was the foreigner, the sojourner in this foreign land. Samaritans were not highly regarded in Israel. And he is the only one to come back and give heartfelt thanks, proclaiming the goodness of God. And so here we see this foreigner, and I got to thinking about this analogy of foreigner. Here we are progressing towards closing a church we've loved for a long time. And we too will be sent elsewhere. And feeling kind of like the foreigner, a sojourner in a foreign land. I know we've been watching the services at First Baptist Church in Salt Lake, and it is foreign. There's no place like home, as Dorothy said in The Wizard of Oz, right? And so we are all going to feel like outsiders wherever we go because we're not here. But we can be like the Samaritan. We can be like the Samaritan and come and proclaim the goodness of God for what God has given us here. So many people have entered these doors wounded, hurt, including myself. I echo with a lot of the words that Henry Nouwen says about taking it to your heart rather than your head. And I've had wise friends give me the same advice because I tend to be pretty analytical. And they would ask me a question, I'd give them the analytical answer. Well, that's the analytical answer. What does your heart say? And so that's my constant battle, is moving it from my head to my heart, allowing my heart to feel the wounds that I carry with me. And it is a lifelong battle. Once you get used to analyzing things in your head and putting words to it, it's hard to get it back into the heart. And maybe that's why God keeps directing so many stone hearts at me. To remind me to get it out of my head and into my heart. To feel the hurt. To put emotion to it. That's what Jesus is recognizing in this Samaritan. He put his heart into how grateful he is to be cured from the leprosy, to be able to return to a, quote, normal life, and to know what that really means. And I've come to notice the pattern, speaking of analytical, come to notice the pattern in the Bible of this is what Jesus routinely does. Jesus comes to somebody broken, hurting. Jesus could heal everybody in all of Israel all at once. Had the power to do it, could do it. But Jesus went person to person, and once Jesus healed their wounds, his charge to them was, go and tell everybody what God has done for you. Over and over again, go and tell. Sometimes he told them, don't tell anybody. Of course, that just incited them more to go tell people. He went all the way across the Sea of Galilee and was greeted by a man swarming with demons and removed the demons from him. And he was so grateful that he wanted to get in the boat and go with Jesus. And Jesus said, no, stay and tell everybody what God has done for you. And so as we, like the lepers, scatter, take what healing we have found here at Morgan Valley Christian Church, the same applies to us. Jesus says, go and tell people what God has done for you. Not this church family, what God has done for you. And in doing so, you take God wherever you go, wherever that may be, to influence whoever you may influence, to help them move from their head to their heart, to feel the wounds deep inside them and know that they are not alone. That is our charge as Christians. That is how it's always been done. And let us go do it with peace and joy and love and hope. Amen.
Amen.